Joining us. I think we're live. Are we live? We've been playing, y'all. I've been playing. Welcome to Stepping Toward Justice with Sarah A. Ford. There's music on here now. Good afternoon, y'all. This was supposed to be a happy hour. So I guess it's gonna be like a Sunday happy hour. We can have a Sunday happy hour. Zeke, let me go ahead and do that. So y'all, I am excited to be. This is our first live with Stepping Toward Justice, and we've got Zeke, who is our producer. Say hi, Zeke.
Hello, everyone.
Very excited, and we have another special guest. Julie Carpenter is here.
Hello.
Julie is like an OG from it feels like forever ago, Julie, when everybody kind of met during the Murdaugh trial, right?
For sure it does.
But Julie has been around for a minute, and we are excited to have Julie on as we talk about all sorts of different things this afternoon. So thanks for jumping on with us. So Julie, I want to start chatting with you. So you're from Indiana.
Yes.
Originally from Chicago. We talked about that. And hey, Stephanie, it's good to see you or hear. We'll see your name on there. How are you? And you've kind of become a victim advocate, so to speak, on Twitter.
Yep, I sure have.
I love it. So, like, how did this start? Did it start with like the Murdaugh trial, or have you been following all sorts of stuff before?
So no. My story is my son's best friend was murdered about 3 months before Paul and Maggie were murdered. So we got a phone call. We were in bed. It was about 10 o'clock at night. And my son was away at school at the time. And he called and he said, Mom, Noah's been shot and I think he's dead.
Oh.
And I'm like, Sam, where did you get this from? You know, social media can be crazy and people post weird things. I'm like, Sam, it can't possibly be true. It can't possibly be true. And I'm trying, you know, my husband and I are trying to calm him down. And this is going on. And I'm searching, you know, to see if there was anything on the police blotter or anything being posted anywhere. And he is just spiraling. I mean, I can't even explain what it's like to have your child on the phone and to hear that in their voice. And
just the
we
terror.
stayed on it was horrible. And so we stayed on the phone with him until about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I got a message. It was from a friend and basically confirming it was true. And so I've walked hand in hand or step in step with this family for the past 2 years. I met Noah when he was 5. He became my son's friend through football, and they were just adorable. His parents are just wonderful. So we've known them for, 17, 18 years. I mean, these are people that have been in our life. And to see what his death caused. And so in his case, what happened was it was a serious violent felon who shot and killed him in his front yard. And one of the things that he was on parole for was reckless. Gosh, I'm not getting this right, but basically he had shot somebody before.
Oh my
and
wow. And he was on parole for that?
He was on parole. Yeah, he was on parole for that. And in the prior case, he had used self-defense as his defense. And that is exactly what he did in Noah's case. And so what happens, and I'm sure you could probably explain this better than I can, but when a defendant chooses to use self-defense, the victim and the victim's family can almost become on trial as well, right? Because character evidence can come in. And to see these two parents just completely devastated, they had gone through something devastated. It seemed like the system was just victimizing them again. And then they're questioning, what did I do? Did I cause my son's death? And they were just so broken apart. And so when you actually see that and you're connected to it, I don't know how it doesn't change you and how you don't become so hyper aware of how hard it is. And the one thing that I will say that I've learned, because in that 3-year period, both my parents passed away. A couple years before that, my sister had passed away. And there's a thing about death and grief that you have to accept the circumstances in order to move forward. But the problem with a murder is there is nothing acceptable about another human being deciding to take someone else's life. So you're stuck. You just can't accept that.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
Well, I think that's such an important thing that you just said about grief, because so often people think that grief is like, I'm going to grieve for a period of time and it's just, okay, then I'm going to move forward. It's not something you ever truly move forward from. You may learn how to deal with it, how to grow from it, but that grief is something that you carry with you. And it's something that if you don't find some way to channel that hurt and anger and all of that, then it can really be devastating.
Oh, for sure.
And
I'm
yeah,
sorry, Sarah. I didn't mean to cut you off.
go ahead.
So one of the things that I noticed, especially when we got to the sentencing phase, is writing letters to the judge. And you can go online and find, like, suggestions, but I couldn't find any place that would actually assist you in writing that letter. And so at some point, that's something I would like to look at doing for other people. The people that just can't put it into words, that have things that they would like to say, but they need someone to be able to write that for them. I would love to take their story and put it in words so that they can send a letter.
That's such a great idea. With what I do at SC Van, a lot of what we do is representing victims, but helping victims and supporters and survivors create those victim impact statements. And one of the things that I always tell people, you want to make things as simple as possible. And I always tell people when they don't know what to say or don't know what to write or don't know how to address the court or whoever they're speaking with, is tell them who you are. Not, I'm the person who was shot, or I'm the person that was, beaten, or what. Who are you as a person?
Sure.
Notwithstanding that, how has this affected you? This victimization, how has it affected you? And then ask for what you want. Those 3 things, if people can answer those 3 questions, then they can really make an impact, which is the point, obviously, to the court, and really can give for a judge or even a defense attorney or even a prosecutor, sometimes you're looking at a piece of paper and it's a name or it's a case number, but you can really make, I'm a real person. And you really want to do that, make their story impactful and meaningful, that they're not just a number, they are a real human being. And I think that's a wonderful idea, Julie, because it is difficult for so many people. A lot of people may not have a victim's rights lawyer, a victim advocate, or somebody that can help them or guide them through that process. But giving people some options, especially online, where they could say, these are some things that I should do, these are some things that I have. I think that's amazing. What a great goal. That's fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Hey, Stephanie. That's all right. This is kind of a weird time for a happy hour, right? I mean, it's Sunday afternoon, so I'm happy. I hope y'all are happy. But it's kind of a weird time for a happy hour, but it seemed like it was kind of the best time that we could get a few of us together and chat and talk and get to know each other a little bit better. Because I know that I did prompt. There's Tracy. Hey, Tracy. Tracy held me to, she said, we got to have an online virtual wine night. And so we're having a wine afternoon, right? I know Stephanie Truesdale, she's recovering from the mimosas from earlier today. You go, girl. It's like the perfect Sunday event, right? Well, Julie, I'm so glad that you came on and told us a little bit of how you've been such an advocate and how you kind of came to doing what you're doing on Twitter. Because we were talking just a second ago, Twitter is a freaking beast sometimes, right?
Oh God, it's the land of crazies.
It can be. Surely no one else has any experience with that, right? It's just us, maybe?
I was not on Twitter before Murdoch. I don't
Not
know.
really. Yeah. Yeah.
My husband's like, "What are you doing on Twitter?" I'm like, "I don't know. I got in and I can't get out."
It's like it definitely sucks you in, right? It sucks you in. And I think what I found is was way better for me. And I don't know if this works for y'all, but it's like the for you and then it's the people you follow.
Yes.
Keep just the people that you follow because
Yeah, because
otherwise you get all sorts of crazy stuff.
that for you is a scary place.
It is. And I'm like, how are these the things that are for me? I don't know how they came up with that. They don't know me very well. Lord. But yeah, Twitter is a crazy place. And you find all sorts of everybody's got opinions, right? And that's okay. Everybody's got opinions. I like to say that I prefer informed opinions versus talking. A
Sure.
lot of people just love to talk, right? But informed opinions versus just talking. But there's a lot of freaking talking on Twitter. A lot.
Yeah. And I think the way Twitter is set up because it limits the amount of characters. So you can only put so much on there, which then leaves so much to interpretation. So it kind of it baits everyone into arguing with each other.
Yes. Yeah. And you forget too. I think that we forget that we're all real people on Twitter. Like
Sure.
real people, feelings, work, families, cooking dinner, all of these things. And sometimes it's easy to be a little bit mean or rude to a screen name. But it's really difficult when we see like people that are bullying other people or a lot of what we've seen more recently with Sandy Smith has just been really, really ridiculous and difficult to watch because it's just not fair, especially for a grieving mom.
Right. I had I'm not going to repeat it here, but there was a person who just said something just absolutely terrible. And I can't even imagine what that would be like for Sandy to read that. It was terrible about her. It was terrible about Steven.
Yeah.
And my husband said to me, he's like, "Well, I wouldn't be on social media. I wouldn't be reading any of that stuff." And I looked at him and said, "But you know who would? I would. I would be reading that." So I don't understand. I understand you don't know Sandy, but I don't know why you think it's okay for you to make comments like that. It's mind-boggling to me.
It really is, and it seems that we forget. We just talked about grief, but this is not something that we expect people to get. People are never going to get over this. And you're exactly right. There's going to be somebody that's going to be reading that's close to the victim or the victim's family, and they're going to see that and they're going to be hurt by that. And it is just so devastating to have not only to deal with what they're already dealing with, whether it's, obviously the grief, or they're dealing with the judicial system, or they're dealing with, things going on in their family because of the victimization, because of what happened to them, but also having these judgments from people from the outside who have absolutely no idea what the hell is happening and just making, let me just judge you and, think that I know something. It's just awful. It really
Yep.
is. It's just horrible. Well, we're going to talk a little bit, and you can stay on with us, Julie, if you would like. We would love to hear what you have to say. We've got a couple of things that we've got going on that, well, obviously we launched this week, so we were really excited about that. And we had our first two guests, Chandra Gibbs, who is Zeke. Look, Zeke's like, yes, Chandra is amazing. Chief Chandra Gibbs is absolutely amazing. She is an OG victim advocate who is just an incredible person. And you can see how much she absolutely adores working with victims, because victims are not easy people. And you know that, Julie. Like, people, when they heard that I was going from being a prosecutor to a victims' rights attorney, they're like, "Oh, what are you gonna like hug people all day and give tissue?" I was like, "Nah, that's not me at all. That is not what I'm gonna do." But I think people have that connotation, like victims are, we're just gonna hug people and just make things better. And that's not it at all. And Chandra just does such an amazing job of being in there, boots on the ground, one of the head folks at her agency, really making sure that victims are at the center of everything they do. And if y'all haven't caught that yet, on our first episode, she is just,
And she's such a well-respected person, being from the same area she is, like, her name is synonymous with the Orangeburg Sheriff's Department. And it's just, she is incredible.
she really is. I love her so much. Like, she's just, and I love her style too. Like, we were at a meeting last week and she was wearing this hot pink suit and I was like, oh God, I love it so much. Like, she's just amazing. So, did you have any victim advocates that y'all worked with, Julie?
So there was one at the court, and primarily she just walked the witnesses in. Most of the witnesses were family or friends that had been there that night.
Mm-hmm.
We did have an overflow room, which a lot of us ended up going into because it was very tense in the courtroom, and there were a lot of law enforcement. And we were told before we even came in that if we did one thing, that we would be thrown out. So even crying, I would try to muffle my crying. And at a certain point, you would just get to a point in the day where it was like, I can't do this anymore. And so we had the Zoom overflow room, and not one time did I see her in there. And I'm sure she does lovely work, but Noah's mother, I think, spent the majority of the time in the Zoom room. And
Right.
I don't recall her ever coming in.
That's so awful because, you're in that awful, awful situation. Her mother, her son is deceased, and, having that person who can really connect you with the system, explain what's going on, be there in case you need something. Do you, what can I get you? Is there, do you have any questions about what's going on? All of that. That's really, it's so essential to have an advocate there.
So I will tell you at the end, at the sentencing, the prosecutor really showed up. Her name is Rebecca, and good Lord, did she show up for us that day? I mean, I was sitting there trying to be quiet, but I'm like, yes, yes. I mean, she laid into him. And one of the things that they were charging him with was domestic violence in front of a child under the age of 16 because Noah's siblings were there. And so his defense attorney stood up and said, well, Mr. Blake had no idea how old, his siblings were. He shouldn't be charged with that because how would he have any idea? So then Rebecca came up and she said, I'd like to remind the court that he brought his daughter, who I believe was 14 at the time. So his daughter was sitting in the car when he shot and killed Noah. So, and when she because that's what I was thinking when his defense attorney said that. And so when she came up for her rebuttal and she said that, I was like, go, Rebecca.
Wow. Damn. That is awful. That really is. It's so refreshing though, when you see somebody that steps up like that, whether it's law enforcement or prosecutor or an advocate or whoever, where you're just like, you just want to stand up and do like the Meryl Streep, like, you go, like, because
for sure.
Right. And you really, really want to, support them in that, because it's hard for that. I mean, it's hard for those people that are in the system every day trying to fight the good fight, it really is.
So I believe she had said after the trial that she was going to leave the prosecutor's office. And one of the things that happened was, in the state of Indiana, anyone who is a witness, so if you're sworn and you give a statement, you can be cross-examined. And that includes sworn victim statements. So the defense attorney said he was going to cross-examine Micah, who is the mother, on her victim impact statement. And
I don't like that at all.
For her, it was like, I can't do this anymore, because these are the people that I have to be friendly with this person and I have to work with this person. And right now I'm so disgusted that anyone would threaten to do something like that. So I think this case and the trial had a big impact on her too. But I got to hand it to her. That day I'll never forget it. Never forget what she did.
Yeah. Wow. I hate that rule, that law, whatever y'all have up there. I don't like that at all.
Oh, it's awful. I did not know that. And I was like, are you sure? Like, how could that possibly be? But the rules are any. So it's so unspecific that it applies to sworn. Now, if it was unsworn, which Noah's brother gave an unsworn statement, specifically for the reason that the defense attorney was threatening to cross-examine anyone who gave a sworn statement. So he gave his unsworn. But I was shocked. I did not know that.
Wow. It's so shocking because I think so many of us, and I don't know, like y'all in the comments who are watching, or if you're watching this later, let me know. Like before you started watching actual trials, like did you have any idea that our system worked the way that it did?
Absolutely none. So I had read some motions and stuff. And as a matter of fact, my son called me last night and he is studying criminal justice and he had to do a paper. And he's like, Mom, I'm reading all these motions. What does this mean? What does that mean? But besides that, I had no idea how things worked. So it was, I had a little bit, but actually going through it and then going through it in a case that you're very emotionally attached to,
Yeah.
it was a lot.
I mean, that's, watching any sort of trial. And I don't know, what are you watching a trial right now, Julie?
So I'm not, because I cannot do the two that are mainly going on right now are the Gannon Stout case, and so I prefer to refer to the victims instead of the accused, and Tylee and JJ's case. And for me, when it's the little ones, it's just too hard. I just can't.
It is. It's so difficult. And I think that it's so refreshing to hear you say, I like to refer to it in the victims' names because we get so focused, not us, but just in general, the online community, the whatever community we want to call that watch these trials, we get so focused on the defendant, what the defendant did, what the defendant's doing, where are they doing, all of that it's sometimes we forget, not intentionally, but we just forget how all of this came down to what happened to that victim or victims. And we just kind of lose focus of that. And it's so difficult, particularly when there are kids, kids involved. It's just tragic and horrific. And I'm not watching a trial right now myself for similar reasons, because it's just too damn intense. And I do this pretty much every day. So it's hard sometimes you just need a little Ted Lasso in your life to make you laugh a little bit, because otherwise, you just bang your head against a wall. So you've got to have that downtime.
Well, and I think like I just think back to the Murdaugh trial, like it was all encompassing. Like if you missed 5 minutes of it, you missed a lot.
Oh, that trial wore me out.
I mean, if you don't watch the whole thing, then you might as well not watch any of it. And so, I mean, I can't imagine like sitting and watching trial after trial after trial, because it's so time consuming.
I've never done Murdaugh was really the first and only trial that I've ever watched like that. And I don't know. I mean, I think it was partially because it was here in South Carolina that it was, that made it more, I don't want to say more real, but just knowing people who were involved in it, knowing, people on, both sides, law enforcement, all of that. But I just know how difficult it is being in a trial, period. And then, watching it to that depth and that just the level of media involvement, scrutiny. I mean, these Facebook groups, like I didn't even know they existed until just like a month or two ago, that they're like these 25,000 people groups that just dissect every single thing that's happening, whether it was and I think they're still doing it in Murdaugh. But all of these trials, I had no idea that was even a thing.
Well, and Sarah, I don't know if you did, if you thought this, but like if you weren't keeping up with the Murdoch trial, you didn't have anything to talk about with people in this area. I mean, like that is what everyone was talking about for 6+ weeks.
It was, and I think, Julie, what drew you to watching Murdoch?
The story was insane.
Yeah.
So, and actually, I listened to podcasts with everything that I had been through, losing my parents and Noah being murdered. I would have like anxiety attacks in the morning. And so my answer to that was, okay, I have to get my brain to do something else. So I started listening to podcasts. And then I found out, I was reading something by a neurologist, that if you can get if you listen to a story and something that has a beginning, middle, and an end, it releases serotonin in your brain. So unknowingly, I was actually fixing my own anxiety, but that's what I was doing anyways. So Mandy Matney's podcast came out in June, I think it was of 21.
Mhm.
And I remember listening to the first episode going, what in the world is this?
Is this
And
real?
then this can't be true. And then I couldn't get enough of it. It was just, that story is absolutely insane. There's so many layers to that story. And it's almost unbelievable that it even happened. I don't even know how it could have happened.
It's mind-boggling to me because there's so much that's still happening. I mean, they just indicted Alec Murdoch on a couple of counts of tax evasion or tax fraud just this week. And it's like, okay, like we're still like in deep there. And I know that we've got so many other trials that are going to be coming from that too. But just the level of depravity and just no sense of, gosh, being there for the people that Alec Murdoch claimed that he was, representing these victims. It was just, it was just shocking. It really, really was completely shocking. And I think it surprised me that so many people from really around the world were so invested in it.
I don't think there's been a story like that one. I really don't. I can't think of one. I mean, even like Von Bulow, that case, that was a crazy case too, but I can't think of one case where there were just so many tentacles to it.
Yeah. I see that Julie, oh, I'm so sorry that you're going through a 5-year. Oh, gosh, bless your heart, Julie. Julie's from the UK. Julie reminded me this week that I need to put what time zone I'm in, like we're in when we do these things, because I did not do that, but I will start doing that, Julie. Thank you for your support, and thank you for being here. And I'm so sorry that you're going through a rough time right now. But meeting people online like Julie from the UK, that you're like, what the heck? Like everybody's, and I think you're right, Julie, that it was just, the story itself was just so crazy. And just, it literally had everything that you can think of when you're thinking, let me write a story. If I could write a story, I don't think you could write a story as crazy as what went on with the Murdoch and what is going on with the Murdoch.
No, I think if I read a novel like that, I would be like, this is ridiculous. This would never happen.
I'm not reading this. I'm not finishing this. This is ridiculous. Like, come on.
And it was so funny, so many people were confusing the mayor of Walterboro with John Grisham, and it's like,
yes.
So many people were like, yeah, of course John Grisham's down there. His next novel, like it's right for the picking, like it is. It's like reading a John Grisham novel is how I felt like everything involved with the Murdoch case was. I felt like I was stuck in a John Grisham novel.
It was. I was and it was weird too, because knowing some of the people that were involved in it, especially like some of the law enforcement, and seeing them like on this national or international scale was just really, really crazy. But yeah, I mean, it was gripping, and I think it's still gripping. So I think Stephanie, is still a hot topic. I had no idea the involvement, I guess, of the true crime community. You know, I really had no idea that it was so, you know, whether it's the Facebook groups or the Twitter, whatever, trade the webs. Yes, it does. It absolutely does. I mean, it's like, wow, the tentacles that this story, the Murdaugh story had, is just crazy. And, you know, another one, you know, we had Carl Stoller on for our second episode this week. And I don't know if you kept up with anything about the Bowen Turner case, Julie, or anybody that's watching, but you know, that was a case that I was involved in, representing some of those victims. And, you know, Carl is just an amazing dad, and he's in law enforcement, and just, it's just unimaginable what he and his family have gone through, not only with what happened to their daughter, and then her passing away, about, gosh, a year and a half ago. But just really difficult, because I think sometimes people don't see how far, speaking of tentacles and the webs we weave, how far, you know, an incident or something, sexual assault or domestic, how far it goes and affects so many different people. You know, I think that people just don't even grasp that, and they think, okay, well, this person will serve their time and it'll be over with. But victims, whether they're the direct victims or not, they take that with them forever in some regard. Like Julie, like what you're talking about with Noah's case. I mean, it's something that has totally impacted you in such a tragic, but yet you're a meaningful way that you're working to try and make something positive of it. And you're not someone that would ever be thought of like Julie Carpenter as a victim here, but you were.
Yeah, I don't know if I would call myself a victim, but it does impact you. I mean, even my husband went one day to the trial with me, and that's about all he could do because it was so hard. And so when the sentencing hearing came up, he's like, I just don't think I can do it. And I respect that. And so luckily, they did do a Zoom so people from home could sit and watch the sentencing hearing. But it's just really difficult. I remember the Saturday after Noah passed away, we had all the football players that were current and that had graduated over in our house. And to see all these young men and all these men, these coaches and fathers that had known this boy from the time he was little, and to see them crying. And, you know, some of them just had to leave because it was just too much. And you're right. It just affects so many people. It's to infinity. You can't count it. You know what I mean? It's just, it makes a huge, huge impact.
It absolutely does. And I think that, you know, it affects our communities and our schools and, you know, anything that person has been involved with, their church community, you know, it can really affect so many different people. And, you know, really, it's just something that the way that crime affects our communities is really, I mean, it's incalculable. Because sometimes, you know, we want to look at the data and say, what does the data show us? And, you know, how does this affect like the immediate victims? But there's really no way to calculate how it affects, you know, the far reaching community who has been essentially victimized as well. You know, I think about these school shootings and things like that we continue to see day after day on our news. We see that. And we're affected by that. We may not be in Nashville, or we may not be in Minneapolis, or we may not be in LA, but the way that we're experiencing it and watching it and seeing things unfold in real time can be incredibly traumatic. And it you know, I fear for us as a culture, because we almost become immune to it with the trauma.
Well, I sure hope that doesn't happen. I hope people don't just shut it out because they're real human beings being affected.
Yeah. It absolutely is. And I think that, these are real people, but I think at some point we start to think, we become desensitized to the enormity of circumstances. And it's something that worries me as well, that it's not something we ever want to become immune to. But also carrying what we see and the trauma of that is just, it's a lot. And I think back to, Carl Stoller and his family, and, the episode in which he talked about the updates with the Bowen Turner case, and, what's going on there. And, the case is dismissed currently, but hoping to get it reopened. And, how the community really, was not supportive of his daughter Dallas and his family. And, kind of what we started talking about, half an hour ago is, our words have power, whether we're putting them on Twitter or the internet or whatever, our words are out there and they have power and they can really affect people. And it's really tough because we forget that. We forget how important our words are and how they can affect people. And, we have folks that sometimes are keyboard warriors, I guess we call them. Isn't that what we call them?
Yes.
They think that,
For sure.
like I'm just going to say all the things back here and it doesn't mean anything. But it really does. It really
Well, the interesting thing about Twitter is you can show up as not yourself. And I
Yeah.
think that definitely makes people more bold. I'm me. That's my name on Twitter. But there's so many people that just, pick a name and a random picture that's not even them, and they say whatever they want.
It's hard. And I think, everybody's been making such a big deal out of, the verified accounts versus not verified accounts. And are you going to pay $8 to be verified? But anybody can really be verified as, Zeke Stevenson or Julie Carpenter or Sarah A4. I mean, it doesn't really mean that that's who we are. And that really, it's hard because we don't know, like, who is this person that's talking to us here? We don't know their background. They're they're putting all of this stuff out there, whether they're doing it as themselves or someone else. And there's no real accountability for that. And I think it's less so since, there's no, these verified accounts or not verified accounts. And it's less ability to have people held accountable for their words. And it's tragic. So,
I'm putting up Stephanie's comment. I think that Twitter is. I think there's a lot of crazy, but I also do think there's a lot of community being built in the sense of, like, who would have thought that two people from Orangeburg, South Carolina could be connecting with someone from Indiana on a live stream talking about important things in our communities and in our world. And we all connected via Twitter.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, without Twitter, I wouldn't know who Sarah is, and I know Stephanie. I wouldn't know who Stephanie is. So there's great people out there. There's good people out there, and it's probably goes to what you said, Sarah. Is just stay in that line of the people you're following, and you'll be fine.
yeah. Yeah, you have to, because it's like with social media, I think you have to reevaluate every so often. Is this where I need to be? Is this where I want to be? Does this community that I've created for myself and my, my following, am I getting what I need here? Am I feeling that there's any toxicity here? And if there is, you got to reevaluate that and fix that, because you're really in control of what you're consuming. In the past couple of decades, the way that we consume our media is just so vastly different than the 7 o'clock news I remember growing up with. Like, you had the 6 o'clock news, the 7 o'clock news, and then it was like done. You had 11 o'clock, that was it. And it was like it wasn't like the constant. And you're getting all of these updates from Twitter and Facebook and all of these other places, YouTube, and you're building this community. But you have to make sure that there's value in that for you and that you're protecting yourself, because these things that we're talking about can be very, very difficult and be very, very traumatic, especially if someone's ever been, a direct victim in their life. And so many of us have those stories, like Julie was sharing, that have affected us and made us want to be involved and want to make a difference. But it can also be really, really difficult too. And you got to make sure you protect yourself because it's tough. It really is.
I think there's people on Twitter that give people hard times for unfollowing or blocking or whatever you do on Twitter, and it's like, like I don't have the mental capacity, I don't have the bandwidth to listen to things or look at things that just are not giving me any life. And
Yeah.
I don't have any problem unfollowing or blocking someone, or because there's more important things in life than, the Twitter arguments that we seem to fall into when, like you said, people hide behind different names, different pictures, different identities on Twitter just to be able to say things that they would never say in person if they were face to face with
Yeah.
someone.
That's so
Yeah,
true.
definitely.
Because I think, you get that keyboard warrior mentality where it's like, I can say whatever the heck I want and there's zero consequences for it. And it's like, I mean, maybe that's true. Maybe it's not true, but I don't know. I just still think, I think I put it out there on Twitter this week. Like, I still think most people are good. I really do. But sometimes it's hard. It's hard to think that. Julie, have you heard anything about the Gerard Price case here in South Carolina?
I have. I have a couple thoughts on that. One, I really wish the media would stop using pictures of Gerard Price smiling. I think that's got to be devastating for Carl Small's family to
Absolutely.
see those pictures and to see him smiling, when their loss is so great. And secondly, I think it was at a press conference, his father, the words that he said, and I'm going to paraphrase, but basically, life doesn't stop just because you're in pain and you're suffering. And I think people need to remember that, that, there's people that have these devastating losses and the world's still going on around them and no one can really see that pain. But that whole thing, I don't even understand how that even happened.
Me neither.
I
have no freaking. Everybody's like, how did this happen? Or I forget, somebody said, I can't join it, but I'm gonna watch the replay because I want to know all the answers about why this happened. And I was like, I have no idea. Like, there's absolutely nothing that I can say that will explain how the hell any of this really went down, because it's one of those situations that, we have so many different stops and checks and balances, or we're supposed to, and they failed in this particular situation. Every single one of them failed. And it seems like it's continuing to fail because, as far as I know, he hasn't been picked up yet. He hasn't been located. But I think, number one, Julie, you're exactly right. I thought that Mr. Smalls, what he said was so profound, and just it makes me think of, anytime I've experienced a real tragedy or loss in my life, there's a point in every single one of those situations where I've gone outside and I've looked and I've thought, there are cars driving by, there are birds that are still chirping, we're still, people are still going to school, all of those things. And you're in the clutches of such tragedy, trying to deal with whatever it is that you're dealing with. And it doesn't make sense and it's not fair. But particularly for this family that they experienced such tragic loss, 2 decades ago, and then to receive a call like he's being released like now, and they have had, weren't notified, had no notification, weren't involved at all. No one spoke to them. They weren't able to speak to any hearing because there wasn't any hearing. It was just a breakdown of every check that we supposedly have to make sure that these things don't happen. And it gives me pause once again, looking at the Murdaugh trial, didn't make me feel good to be a lawyer in South Carolina. I'm proud to be a lawyer in the work that I do, but to see the way that Murdaugh and some of his associates, so to speak, behaved and what they were able to get away with for so long didn't make me proud. And this doesn't make me proud either. It makes me realize there's a lot of work that we have to do. There's a lot of work.
Well, two things that that I would say, I think a lot of people after the Murdaugh trial, I heard say, they had a renewed sense of, pride in the justice system in South Carolina. And, how long did that last? A couple of weeks. And then this happens.
Right.
But two, we talked about some of the hardships of social media, especially Twitter. But, I think about what the Twitter, for lack of a better word, backlash from all of this and pressuring the Supreme Court to make access available to the streams of the what happened on the hearing this past week, and all of the social pressure that came from social media to take another look at all of this. I mean, that's pretty profound and pretty awesome that normal everyday people like me could add my voice to a larger group of people to get the results that we thought needed to happen. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I do think, during the trial, South Carolina does have a lot to be proud of. That prosecution team was amazing. And those law enforcement professionals that came up, I mean, you've got some amazing people there. And it's hopeful to know that there are good people in the right positions so that people like Alec Murdaugh can't get away with the things that he's done.
It is there, I think that there are good people there. We just need to highlight those. And I think, highlighting those good people that are doing those things, that are in those positions to say, hey, we are working hard to eradicate, this corruption. We're working to make sure this doesn't happen, working to prosecute people that commit these crimes. And I think having that collective community again, where you feel like my voice is I'm not just screaming into a void here. Like I'm able to raise my voice with these other people to try and get some change, to make it better. I think that is a really powerful thing with social media. And I think that, I think it definitely did help with the Smalls case. I mean, things moved very, very quickly with that particular case. And, I've never seen the Supreme Court move that quickly. When I was there, I was like seated right in the middle, like watching all five of them, like going back and forth with all of their questions and trying to figure out which way they were all kind of leaning in the moment. And then like within hours, they had ruled with the result. I think that in and of itself is great. But there needs to be some definite investigation here as to what happened, what went on, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Because there's absolutely no excuse for what happened, for sure. So, and speaking of something, raising our collective voices, that I've got to talk about this week, our Victims Matter rally is on May 9th, and this will be our second annual rally. Last year, it kind of stemmed from the Bowen Turner case and with the victims in that case. And this year, we've kind of expanded it to include all victims in South Carolina. But going to the State House to make sure that our legislators and people in power know that victims matter, that they have rights. And if those rights are not being enforced and protected, that we're going to raise hell about it. And so I'm very excited to have a number of speakers that are going to be coming, some of whom you all will know. We will have a number of victims, a number of advocates, and some legislators that will be coming. Sandy Smith will be one of our speakers. We are very excited to have her, and Mandy Matney will be joining us to talk about how important it is for us to refocus, recenter victims' voices in South Carolina and beyond. So we are very excited to be doing this once again. But don't you worry, Stephanie, we're actually going to be live streaming it, and we will have a recording of it so you can join us. So we'll have our program at 9:30 on the 9th. And then we're going to teach people how to go into the State House and talk to their legislators. So often people are saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. How do I do this? How do I go up there? And do I just talk to them? Well, we're going to teach people how to do that. So not only we're rallying together to support victims and survivors and to provide resources to those folks, but also say, hey, there's something you can do about this. And here's what you can do. And here's how you do it.
It also, Stepping Toward Justice is going to be there, which is awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't forget about that, Sarah. We're going to have hopefully some.
I'm a lawyer. I'm trying, Zeke. I'm trying. Sorry.
I know. We're hoping to have some like on-scene interviews happening, which will be really cool. But I'll say when I was in graduate school, we did some advocacy work at the Georgia State House, and that was one of the coolest experiences, standing in the lobby and, handing a meeting request form to one of the pages to walk onto the Senate floor or the House floor to get a senator or a representative from their desk, and then like seeing them come out and engage in conversation with you. And, it was one of those really intimidating things. Like, I don't know what to say, but at the end of the day, they're just a human just like you, and they are interested in what you have to say, and they want to hear what you have to say. And so I would just encourage anybody who wants to come. I think it's going to be really cool. I'm looking forward to it, and can't wait to get in there and have good conversation.
Me too. It's, our voices mean something. Our words have power, and we can use that power for good or for evil. And hopefully we can all collectively come together to support victims and survivors and make sure that our legislators, with everything that they're doing, making sure that they're looking at it, not necessarily, everybody deserves justice, whether you're a defendant, whether you're a victim. We want there to be fairness in our system. But for so long, we have had so many laws and things that have been passed that are so focused on the defendant that we're not even thinking about the victim. So getting legislators to realize, wow, there's a lobby filled with people. We had the entire lobby last year filled with people who were there for crime victims, and to make sure that they're thinking, heck, there was a lot of people in there and they had a lot to say, and making them think when something comes up, when there's a bill that they're debating, that they're looking at passing, that they're thinking about it through the eyes of a crime victim in that community. So we are excited to be joining. Stepping Toward Justice will be there. Yay. Thank you, Zeke. We will be there. And I'm excited to be SC Van and Scad Vasa. We're co-hosting it this year, and I'm excited to be kind of running the mic that morning as well.
Sarah, I tell a quick story. When we were advocating at the Georgia State House, Stacey Abrams was still the minority leader in the House of Representatives, and she was at that point kind of a rising star. You were hearing murmurs about her, and I said, there was a group of us, and we said, let's just see if we can get her to come out here. She came out, and she was the nicest, most down-to-earth person. And, I know, we all might not, agree with everybody politically on every issue, but, it was pretty cool moment to get to interact with her. So you never know what rising star you might get to interact with at the advocacy day.
That's so true. That is so true. Well, I've enjoyed chatting with y'all. Julie, thanks for joining today.
Well, thanks for asking me. I enjoyed it. And thanks for all the work you guys do. It's so important, and it's so appreciated.
Well, thanks, Julie. It's it's important to me that people are getting good information. And if I can't answer a question, I'm not going to answer a question. But if I can give some good information, I want to do that. And certainly anything dealing with crime victims, want to draw attention to that. And thank you for all that you do. What you're doing on Twitter and beyond is not going unnoticed. And I appreciate a fellow sister advocate in you. So thank you. Thank you for doing what you do. And thank y'all for joining us. Sunday afternoon, happy hour. The sun came out. It was raining earlier. But thanks for kind of reviewing what happened this week and chatting about some things. And we'll be back again soon.
Sarah, do you want to preview this week's episode?
Zeke, you're so good at being a producer. You really are.
I know.
So we have another really special guest this week. Brett Stoller, Tabatabai, is going to be coming on. Her sister was Dallas Stoller. This is a continuation of our second episode with Carl Stoller. And Brett really digs in deep. She just is so genuine, just has such a fierce advocate heart for her sister and for other victims. And she has so much to share. And she really talks about what happened with her sister, how it affected their family. She talks about her sister's death. But she really, she told me, she said, I told her, I said, anytime that I have a microphone, you have a microphone, Brett. So whatever you want to talk about, I want you to. And she said, is it okay if I talk about this? And I said, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that, y'all will, if you followed the Bowen Turner case, and even if you haven't, I think that you will, really learn from that, really hear a lot about how, sexual assault especially affects an entire family, an entire community. And unfortunately with this particular case, there were absolutely tragic circumstances, resulting with Dallas's death, some months ago. But there is hope. There are people that are doing the work, people who are pushing and advocating, and it's okay to be a little bit rowdy in what we're doing. So thank y'all for joining us. Yes, Stephanie, Zeke with the plug. Yes, I appreciate it. He's a good guy. So y'all have a great rest of your Sunday afternoon. Cheers. Happy hour to y'all. Happy hour. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Zeke. Thanks y'all for watching, and we'll see you later on this week. Bye.